If you want the absolute best quality out of your footage, you are going to need the best settings. And it doesn't matter if you're shooting with the original Mavic 3, the Mavic 3 Pro, or the Mavic 3 Classic. They all share the same sensor, and all these settings applies to each and every one. Now, these settings will also make sure your footage is going to look clean, detailed, professional, and of course, cinematic. First up is resolution. This sensor can shoot in 5.1K, and there's really no reason not to take advantage of it. Even if your final export is in 4K, shooting in 5.1K gives you a sharper, more detailed image overall. Next, we need to set the frame rate. You have most likely heard that 24 frames per second are the frame rates you want to shoot in. In most cases, it is, but I have found that for drone footage, the footage itself can look a bit jittery or stuttering. That is why I recommend to shoot in 30 frames per second instead of 24. Next, we want to change our color profile to D-Log. This will give us the most detail and dynamic range. This is crucial because we want full control in post. Next, set coding format to H.265 and format to MOV. Next up is white balance. If you're shooting with white balance set to auto, don't. Fly your drone up into the sky, switch to auto white balance, and then switch it back to manual. This will give you a solid starting point. White balance can be tweaked in post, so it's much better to have a slightly off manual setting than relying on auto, which can shift mid-shot and ruin your footage. Next up, we have exposure. For ISO, set it to the lowest possible, ISO 400. Next, let's set the shutter speed. To follow the 180-degree shutter rule, you always want your shutter speed to be double your frame rate. And since we are shooting at 30 frames per second, we want to set our shutter speed to 1/60. The reason we do this is to maintain a natural looking motion blur, which is key to making your footage feel smooth and cinematic. You probably heard that when shooting in log, you should overexpose. That advice is more relevant for handheld cameras. But for drones, it's a different story. Most of the time, you're flying towards bright skies, sunsets, or clouds. And in those shots, the sky is the hero. We want to preserve those highlights. That's why I recommend exposing around 0, or even slightly underexposing, to make sure you retain all the detail in the brightest part of the image. If you overexpose the sky, it's gone forever. You can't bring that back in post. But if your shadows are a little under and you get some noise, that's a much better trade-off. Noise is fixable, blown out skies are not. To hit the right exposure, you'll often need to stop down the aperture, and a lot of the times all the way down to f11. And if it's still too bright, your other option is to increase your shutter speed, but we don't want to do that, because we will break that 180-degree shutter rule if we do. That is why you will need sunglasses, or in other words, ND filters to get that perfect exposure. I use the ND filters from Freewell and they have been great. Next up, we have movement. Sometimes I'll fly in normal or even sports mode depending on the mood or energy I want in a shot. But honestly, for 95% of cinematic flying, you want a slow, controlled movement. That means flying in cine mode. And just switching to cine isn't enough. We need to make sure our controls are dialed in for smooth cinematic motion. That brings us to one of the most important sections, gain and expo tuning. Click the 3 dots up in the right corner. Then click on control. Scroll down and click on gain and expo tuning. Make sure cine is selected since this is the mode we want to adjust. Scroll down to max angular velocity. This controls how quickly the drone can rotate left or right. A higher number means faster, more aggressive movements. I recommend setting this around 25 degrees a second for smoother, more cinematic footage. Next we have yaw smoothness. This softens the drone's rotation and helps pans look more like steady cam shots. It gradually eases out motion when you let go of the stick, avoiding any abrupt stops. My recommendation here is to set this to somewhere between 15 to 30. Brake sensitivity controls how quickly the drone stops when you release the stick. For cinematic movement, set it to around 100. This gives you a much softer stop, helping the drone ease into stillness instead of an abrupt halt. But be careful with this. We usually brake for a reason. Expo. Expo controls how the drone reacts to your stick input. When you lower the expo value, your movements become smoother and more gradual. A higher expo makes the drone react more aggressively and instantly. This can look jerky. This is why we want to keep our expo values low. That way, even small movements on the stick results in slow, smooth motion, which is what we want for cinematic control. Next we have max control speed. This controls how fast the camera tilts up or down. The speed itself is adjusted with the gimbal wheel, but the setting decides the top speed. For cinematic moves, I found that 10 degrees per second is more than enough. It keeps the tilt slow and smooth instead of jumping too quickly. Lastly, we have tilt smoothness. The tilt smoothness controls how smoothly the gimbal tilts. This is super important for that cinematic feel. But most importantly, it affects how gently the tilt comes to a stop when you let go of the wheel. You don't want that robotic instant stop. I have this set to the maximum for the smoothest result. I'll show you here on the screen the exact settings I use, and they're a great starting point. But I highly recommend going out and experimenting to see what feels right for you and your flying style. Also, a pro bonus tip. When you launch the drone and you're already in Cine mode, switch to normal and back to Cine to make sure your custom settings actually kicks in. If you truly want cinematic looking footage, you are going to have to learn to color grade it as well. That is why in my next video I'm going to show you a fast, free and super simple way how you can grade your D-Log footage in DaVinci Resolve with no LUTs, no paid tools, just beautiful professional looking results in the free version. So don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button before you leave so you don't miss out. Take care, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Have a good day.